Welcome back. Leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel and enjoy the story. Dora was just 19, but life had already demanded more from her than from many adults. Her brunette hair was often tousled from the wind, and her clothes were worn from the daily struggle. She lived in a small, crumbling house on the outskirts of Boston, with her ailing mother and two younger siblings, carrying the weight of the family on her shoulders. Yet despite the hardship, Dora never let go of her tender smile and the hope that one day life could be gentler. The weight of responsibility had settled on Dora's slender shoulders years ago, when her father abandoned them without warning, leaving behind only debts and broken promises. Her mother, once vibrant and strong, now lay bedridden most days, her body weakened by an autoimmune disease that the family couldn't afford to treat properly. 12-year-old Michael and 10-year-old Sophie looked to their big sister as both mother and father, their young eyes full of trust that somehow made Dora's burden both heavier and more bearable. Each morning before dawn, Dora would rise to prepare breakfast, often just oatmeal stretched thin to feed 4 mouths, before cycling to her first job at the local bakery. The owner, Mrs. Patel, had taken pity on the determined teenager and allowed her to work from 5 a.m. until noon, kneading dough and serving customers with a smile that never hinted at the exhaustion beneath it. After her shift ended, Dora would deliver handmade pastries to various businesses downtown, earning a few extra dollars in tips. Evenings found her cleaning offices in a corporate building, mopping floors and emptying trash while executives worked, late in their glass-walled rooms, most never bothering to look her in the eye. On a particularly cold November afternoon, as a biting wind howled through the streets of Boston, Dora pedaled laboriously along a quiet road after delivering a few boxes of Mrs. Patel's specialty pastries. Dark clouds hung low in the sky, threatening. Snow and her thin jacket provided little protection against the biting cold. Her fingers, red and numb, gripped the handlebars with determination as she thought of Michael and Sophie waiting at home, probably hungry and needing help with homework. Lost in her thoughts of how to stretch the week's groceries another few days, Dora almost missed the sight at the side of the road. Parked on the shoulder, with hazard lights blinking steadily, was a sleek black Tesla. Next to it, a man slumped. Against the driver's side door, one hand pressed to his forehead, visibly disoriented. It was Benedict, a wealthy and influential tech entrepreneur, known throughout the business world as a relentless perfectionist and visionary. His company, Technova, had revolutionized renewable energy storage systems, making him one of the youngest billionaires in America. Years of pressure, constant innovation demands, and sleepless nights had gradually undermined his health. That afternoon, the stabbing migraine and blurred vision had forced him to pull over, overwhelmed not just by physical exhaustion, but by something deeper he couldn't name, a profound emptiness that all his money and success had failed to fill. Dora hesitated briefly, her mother's warnings about strangers flashing through her mind, but something in the man's posture, the vulnerability that cut through his expensive clothes and the aura of privilege, stirred her compassion. Her instinct to help overcame her caution. She propped her bicycle against a nearby tree and approached carefully. "Sir, are you okay? Do you need help?" she asked, kneeling beside him on the gravelly roadside, ignoring how the cold dampness immediately soaked through the knees of her only pair of jeans. Benedict, startled by the unexpected voice, looked up with bleary eyes. For a moment he seemed confused, as though he couldn't comprehend why anyone would stop to help. His vision gradually focused on the young woman before him, her concerned expression, the slight tremble in her hands from the cold, the worn but clean clothes. I think I'm having a migraine," he managed, his voice strained. "Just needed to stop driving for a minute." Without hesitation, Dora rummaged through her backpack and produced a small bottle of water and 2 aspirin tablets that she kept for her mother's bad days. "Here, these might help. You shouldn't be alone out here, especially feeling like this," she said softly, offering both the water and pills with steady hands. Benedict accepted them with a mixture of surprise and gratitude. As he swallowed the medicine, Dora unwrapped her scarf, the one nice thing she owned, a gift from her mother years ago, and folded it into a makeshift compress. "May I?" she asked, and when he nodded, She gently pressed it against his forehead. They remained that way for several minutes, and for the first time in years Benedict truly listened, not to market projections, not to technological specifications or investor concerns, but to the voice of someone who cared without an agenda. Dora spoke of simple things as she tended to him, her siblings' latest school achievements, her mother's gift for storytelling despite her illness, and how, even on the hardest days, the sight of the sunrise while biking to work reminded her that each day carried new possibilities. Every word penetrated Benedict's consciousness like rays of sunshine breaking through storm clouds. The genuine concern in this stranger's eyes made him acutely aware of how long it had been since anyone had looked at him as just a person, not a balance sheet or a business opportunity. When the worst of his symptoms had subsided enough that he could drive, Benedict reached for his wallet. "Please let me thank you properly," he said, offering her several $100 bills. Dora shook her head firmly, rising to her feet. "I didn't do it for payment. I just hope you're feeling better," she replied with a genuine smile, brushing the dirt from her knees. "Maybe just drive carefully, or better yet, call someone to pick you up." Benedict stared at her, perplexed by this simple kindness with no strings attached. Before he could respond, Dora was already retrieving her bicycle, offering a small wave as she prepared to continue her journey home. "Wait," Benedict called, suddenly not wanting her to leave. "What's your name?" "Dora," she answered, mounting her bike. "Take care of yourself, sir." "Benedict," he responded automatically. "My name is Benedict." With a final nod and smile, Dora pedaled away, disappearing around a bend in the road, leaving Benedict alone with thoughts that seemed to echo more loudly than they had in years. That night, in his penthouse overlooking the Boston skyline, Benedict could not sleep. The encounter with Dora had shaken something loose within him. As he stared at the ceiling, her words replayed in his mind, each syllable highlighting the stark contrast between her life and his. Despite having so little, she radiated a sense of purpose and connection that he, with all his resources, found, painfully absent in his own existence. Benedict had everything society deemed valuable: wealth, power, recognition, yet he felt hollow. His massive apartment, filled with expensive art he rarely noticed, felt less like a home and more like a showcase. His relationships were transactional, his days measured in stock points and market shares. At 35, he had achieved what most could only dream of, but at what cost? The next morning, driven by an impulse he couldn't fully explain, Benedict had his driver take him to the bakery where Dora had mentioned she worked. He watched from his car as she exited at noon, her shoulders slightly slumped from the morning's labor, but her step still determined as she mounted her bicycle, a small bag of what looked like day-old bread tucked carefully into her backpack. For 3 days, Benedict followed her routine discreetly, piecing together the elements of her life: the early mornings at the bakery, the careful delivery rounds, the evening cleaning job, and finally, the return to the small, dilapidated house, where lights burned late, as she presumably helped her siblings with homework or tended to her mother. On the 4th day, he made a decision. If you are enjoying the story, type 5 in the comments and subscribe for more videos like this. If not, type 0. It helps me create even better content for you. Continuing. Dora was just finishing her shift at the bakery, untying her flour-dusted apron when the bell above the door chimed. She looked up to find the man from the roadside, Benedict, standing there looking markedly healthier, but somehow just as out of place in the homey confines of Mrs. Patel's bakery as a peacock would be in a chicken coop. "You found me," she stated simply, surprise evident in her voice but no fear. Something about him had struck her as trustworthy despite his obvious wealth. Benedict nodded, suddenly uncertain now that he was face to face with her again. The carefully prepared speech he'd rehearsed seemed inadequate in the warm, flower-scented air of the bakery. "I wanted to thank you properly," he began, aware of Mrs. Patel's curious glance from behind the counter, "and to make you an offer." Dora raised an eyebrow, her expression guarded. "I told you I don't need—" "It's not charity," Benedict interrupted quickly. "It's a proposition. Would you have lunch with me? Just to talk?" Something in his tone, a blend of confidence and unexpected vulnerability made Dora hesitate. Finally, she nodded. "I have an hour before my delivery rounds." They walked to a small cafe 2 blocks away, an unpretentious place with checked tablecloths and simple, hearty food. As they settled into a corner booth, Benedict found himself strangely nervous. He, who negotiated billion-dollar deals without, breaking a sweat, was struggling to find the right words to speak to this young woman. "I've been watching you," he admitted, wincing at how it sounded. I've been observing your routine, trying to understand your situation." Dora's eyes narrowed. "That sounds a bit invasive." "It was," he acknowledged, surprising himself, with his honesty. "But I needed to be sure before I made my proposal." "And what exactly is this proposal?" Dora asked, stirring sugar into her coffee, the only item she'd ordered despite Benedict's insistence that she choose anything from the menu. Benedict took a deep breath. "I want to help you and your family, not with a handout, but with a genuine opportunity. I own Technova—" "The renewable energy company," Dora interjected, recognition dawning. "You're that Benedict? Benedict Walsh?" He nodded, unused to being recognized by someone like Dora. "Yes, and I want to offer you a position within my company. Not just any position. I want to train you personally to become a project manager in our community outreach division." Dora nearly choked on her coffee. "Project manager? Me? But I haven't even finished high school properly. I got my GED while working. I know nothing about technology or business or—" Her voice trailed off as the absurdity of the offer washed over her. "You have everything that degrees can't teach," Benedict said firmly. "Intelligence, resilience, compassion, and most importantly, perspective. You understand the real needs of communities like yours in a way that none of my Ivy League executives ever could." Dora set down her cup, studying his face for any sign of mockery or hidden agenda. Finding none, she asked the question burning in her mind. "Why? Why would you offer something like this to a complete stranger?" Benedict considered his answer carefully. "Because when you helped me on that road, you didn't see a wallet or a potential benefit. You saw a person in need. That perspective is exactly what my community initiatives are missing. And selfishly," he added with unexpected candor, "because in those few minutes of conversation, you made me remember what it feels like to be human, not just successful." The waitress arrived with Benedict's sandwich, providing Dora a moment to collect her thoughts. The offer seemed too good to be true, the kind of miraculous opportunity that happened in movies, not to people like her. Yet something in Benedict's earnest expression made her want to believe it was genuine. "I couldn't leave my family," she said finally. "They depend on me completely." "I understand," Benedict replied. "The position would include comprehensive health insurance that would cover your mother's condition. Your siblings would have access to educational support, and we could arrange for home care for your mother while you're working." Dora's heart pounded. The thought of her mother receiving proper medical care, of Michael and Sophie having the resources they needed for school, was almost too much to hope for. "This seems impossible," she whispered. "It's not charity," Benedict emphasized again, sensing her pride. "It's an investment. In you, in your potential. I'm not giving you anything you haven't earned through your own strength and character. I'm just providing the opportunity for you to apply those qualities in a way that benefits both your family and my company." As they continued talking, Benedict outlined more details. A reasonable starting salary, flexible hours that would allow her to be home when her siblings returned from school, a training period during which she would learn the basics of project management and Technova's business model. By the time they had finished lunch, Dora felt dizzy with possibilities. It was as though a door had suddenly appeared in what had always been a solid wall, a door leading to a future she had never allowed herself to imagine. "I'll need to think about it," she said finally, "to talk to my family." Benedict nodded, respecting her caution. "Of course. Take all the time you need." He handed her his business card, simple, elegant, with just his name and a phone number. "Call me when you've decided." That evening, as Dora explained the incredible offer to her mother, she expected skepticism or warnings about things that seemed too good to be true. Instead, her mother's tired eyes filled with tears of hope. "All these years I've prayed, for someone to see the extraordinary person I know you are," she whispered, squeezing Dora's hand with what little strength she possessed. Maybe God finally sent someone who could see it too. 3 days later, Dora called the number on the card and accepted Benedict's offer. The following weeks brought changes more rapid and profound than Dora could have anticipated. Benedict arranged for her mother to see specialists who adjusted her medication and developed a comprehensive treatment plan. Michael and Sophie were enrolled in a better school closer to their home, with tutors to help them catch up on what they'd missed. The family's house underwent essential repairs to ensure it was safe and comfortable, though Benedict was careful to respect Dora's wishes that they not be moved to a completely new place. This humble house held their memories of better days. Dora herself began intensive training at Technova headquarters, spending her mornings learning about renewable energy technologies, community needs assessment, project budgeting, and proposal development. Benedict kept his promise to mentor her personally, meeting with her several times a week to answer questions and guide her through the corporate landscape that was so foreign to her. The transition wasn't without its challenges. Many of Technova's executives viewed Dora with undisguised skepticism, some assuming she had gained her position through less professional means. The technical language and corporate protocols sometimes left her feeling overwhelmed and inadequate. Each night she returned home exhausted, her mind whirling with new information. Yet day by day, Dora found her footing. Her natural intelligence allowed her to grasp complex concepts quickly. Her experience with managing her family's tight budget gave her unexpected insights into resource allocation. Most significantly, her intimate understanding of community needs enabled her to identify flaws in Technova's existing outreach programs that more privileged executives had overlooked entirely. 3 months into her training, Dora was invited to attend a meeting where the company's latest community solar initiative was being discussed. The project aimed to bring renewable energy to low-income neighborhoods, but the proposal included requirements that would make participation nearly impossible for the very families it claimed to target. As the presentation concluded and executives nodded in approval, Dora found herself speaking up despite her nervousness. "Excuse me," she began, her voice initially soft but growing stronger as she continued. "This program requires participants to pay installation costs up front before receiving rebates, but most families in these neighborhoods live paycheck to paycheck. They simply don't have savings to front these costs, regardless of how beneficial. It might be long-term." The room fell silent, executives exchanging glances that ranged from surprise to annoyance. Benedict, observing from the back of the room, leaned forward with interest. "Furthermore," Dora continued, emboldened by the silence, "the application process requires internet access and documentation that many residents may struggle to provide. If we truly want this initiative to succeed, we need to meet people where they are, not where we wish they were." For several seconds, no one spoke. Then the head of the project, a Harvard-educated executive named Victor Harrington, cleared his throat. "And what would you suggest, Ms. Cohen, given your extensive experience in corporate sustainability?" The condescension in his tone was unmistakable. Dora felt her cheeks burn, but met his gaze steadily. "I would suggest a partnership with local community centers and churches to create application hubs where people can get assistance. I would recommend a payment plan that requires no upfront costs, with savings from reduced energy bills, automatically paying off the installation over time. And I would advise including basic home weatherization as part of the package, since even the best solar system won't help if a house is losing energy through poor insulation and old windows." Victor opened his mouth to respond, but Benedict spoke first. "Those are excellent suggestions, Dora. Victor, I want these ideas incorporated into a revised proposal by the end of the week. Dora, you'll co-lead the revision team." The tension in the room was palpable as Benedict dismissed the meeting. As executives filed out, several nodded to Dora with new respect, while others, Victor included, barely concealed their resentment. Left alone with Benedict, Dora exhaled shakily. "I shouldn't have spoken up like that. I embarrassed Mr. Harrington in front of everyone." "You didn't embarrass him," Benedict corrected. "You exposed a blind spot that he, and frankly all of us, should have recognized." That's exactly why I brought you here, Dora. Your perspective isn't just valuable, it's essential. That night, as Dora recounted the meeting to her mother, she realized how much had changed in just a few months. Her mother was sitting up in bed, her color better than it had been in years, actually laughing at Dora's impression of Victor's stunned expression. Michael and Sophie were completing homework at a proper desk rather than on the floor, their recent test scores reflecting the benefits of consistent meals, adequate sleep and educational support. Yet something still nagged at Dora's conscience, a sense that while her family's life had improved dramatically, they were still dependent on Benedict's goodwill. What if he lost interest in his pet project? What if Technova faced financial difficulties? The security they now enjoyed felt wonderful but precarious. As if sensing her daughter's concerns, Dora's mother took her hand. "You've carried us for so long, my brave girl. Now you must allow yourself to grow in this opportunity. Whatever happens, you've already given us more than we could have hoped for." The following weeks saw Dora working closely with the community solar initiative team, including a reluctant Victor Harrington. The revised project incorporated all of her suggestions, and as they began pilot implementations in 3 Boston neighborhoods, the response was overwhelmingly positive. Where previous Technova initiatives had struggled to find participants, this one had waiting lists. The local press took notice, publishing stories about the innovative approach that made green energy accessible to families previously left out of the sustainability movement. With each success, Dora's confidence grew. She began developing her own ideas for community programs, drawing on her lived experience and the technical knowledge she was rapidly acquiring. Benedict continued to mentor her, but increasingly found himself learning from her as well. Insights about resilience, community dynamics, and human needs that his privileged background had never taught him. 6 months into Dora's time at Technova, a series of events would test her newfound security and forever change her relationship with Benedict. As winter once again gripped Boston, Benedict was confronted with a health crisis that threw all his carefully constructed plans into disarray. For years, he had ignored the warning signs of chronic stress and physical exhaustion. Now, collapsed in his office after a 72-hour work sprint, he could no longer deny the toll his lifestyle had taken. Tests revealed a serious heart condition, requiring immediate lifestyle changes and potentially surgery. Alone in his hospital room, surrounded by machines monitoring his vital signs, Benedict faced his mortality with the same clarity that had characterized his business decisions and found his priorities shifting with devastating speed. What use was his empire if he died before 40? What meaning did his financial success have when there was no one who would truly mourn his passing rather than the loss of what he could provide? The faces of his estranged parents, former colleagues he'd driven away with his intensity, and relationships sacrificed for success flashed through his mind. And then, unexpectedly, Dora's face appeared, her genuine concern that day by the roadside, her determination to improve not just her life, but the lives of those around her. When Dora heard about Benedict's hospitalization from his assistant, she immediately went to visit him, bringing along a simple homemade soup that her mother had insisted on preparing despite her weakened state. "He helped our family when we needed it most," her mother had said firmly. "Now he needs to know he's not alone." The moment Dora stepped into the hospital room, Benedict felt an emotion he couldn't immediately identify. Relief, comfort, something dangerously close to joy, despite his circumstances. Whatever it was, it caught him off guard, making him acutely aware of how pale and diminished he must appear against the stark white hospital linens. "You didn't have to come," he said, attempting to sit up straighter. "Of course I did," Dora replied simply, pulling a chair to his bedside. "How are you feeling? Really feeling, not the answer you give to your board of directors." The question, asked with such direct compassion, broke through Benedict's carefully maintained facade. "Terrified," he admitted, the word hanging between them with surprising weight. "Not of dying exactly. More of realizing that I've spent my entire adult life pursuing goals that suddenly seem meaningless." Dora listened as Benedict spoke about his childhood as the son of demanding, emotionally distant parents who measured love in achievements, about his drive to prove himself, first at MIT, then in the tech world, about the relationships he'd sacrificed, the personal connections he'd neglected, all in service to an ambition that now felt hollow. The doctor says I need to reduce stress, delegate more, fundamentally change how I live, Benedict concluded. But I don't know how to be any other way. This company, this work, it's all I have. That's not true, Dora said gently. You have the capacity for kindness that made you stop and help my family. You have the vision to create technology that could make the world better. You have people who care about what happens to you, including me. Her words lingered in the air between them, simple yet profound. For perhaps the first time, Benedict allowed himself to accept care from someone else without calculating its cost or purpose. They sat together in comfortable silence as he ate the soup Dora had brought, its simple flavors somehow more satisfying than any meal from the Michelin-starred restaurants he frequented. As visiting hours drew to a close, Benedict asked Dora about the community solar project. She updated him enthusiastically, detailing the modifications they'd made based on initial feedback and the growing interest from other neighborhoods. "I've been thinking," she said hesitantly as she prepared to leave, "what if we created a training program for residents in these communities to learn installation and maintenance of the systems? It would create jobs where they're needed most, and people might feel more comfortable having someone from their own neighborhood working on their homes." Benedict considered the idea, immediately seeing its potential. "Draft a proposal," he said. "We'll discuss it when I'm back in the office." After Dora left, Benedict stared at the ceiling, turning over their conversation in his mind. The cancer of emptiness that had been growing within him for years seemed temporarily held at bay by her visit. There was something about Dora, her genuineness, her natural empathy combined with practical intelligence, that made him see possibilities beyond the narrow focus of profit and expansion that had defined his career. That night, Benedict made two decisions that would alter the course of his life and Dora's. First, he would reevaluate Technova's priorities, shifting focus more explicitly toward community impact alongside technological innovation. Second, and more personally significant, he would find a way to secure Dora's future permanently, ensuring that neither she nor her family would ever again face the precarious circumstances from which he had helped lift them. The following morning, against medical advice but with typical determination, Benedict summoned his lawyers to his hospital room. Hours later, when Dora arrived for another visit, she found him sitting up in bed, surrounded by papers, but looking strangely at peace. "I've been making some changes," he announced without preamble, "to the company structure, to my own role within it, and to your position as well." Dora felt her stomach tighten with apprehension. Was he letting her go? Had his health scare made him reconsider what some still viewed as his charity project? "I'm establishing a new division within Technova," Benedict continued, seemingly oblivious to her concern. "The Community Energy Equity Program. It will encompass the solar initiative and develop new projects focused specifically on bringing renewable energy solutions to underserved communities. With a dedicated budget and staff." He paused, watching her face carefully. "And I want you to direct it." Dora's breath caught. "Direct it? But I've only been with the company for 6 months. I'm still learning the basics of—" "You understand. The mission in ways that none of my executives with decades of experience ever could," Benedict interrupted. "Yes, you'll need support, a team of technical experts, experienced project managers. But the vision, the heart of this initiative, that needs to be yours." Before Dora could formulate a response, Benedict continued, "There's more. I'm creating a trust for your family. Your mother's medical care will be covered for life. Your siblings will have their education funded through graduate school if they choose to go that far." Dora rose from her chair, shaking her head. "Benedict, no. The job opportunity was one thing, but this is too much. I can't accept it." Benedict's expression softened. "It's not a gift, Dora. It's an investment in potential. Your mother's wisdom, your siblings' future contributions, these have value that extends far beyond your family. Consider it a down payment on the positive change you'll all bring to the world when you're not constrained by basic survival." "But why?" Dora pressed. genuinely confused by the magnitude of his generosity. "Why us? Why me?" Benedict was silent for a long moment, seemingly wrestling with his answer. "Because that day on the road, you reminded me of what matters. Because in the months since, you've shown me what's possible when intellect is guided by compassion. And because," he added more quietly, "I want to know that if something happens to me, the values I believed in but lost sight of will continue through work like yours." The raw honesty in his voice made further argument impossible. Dora sank back into her chair, overwhelmed by possibilities she had never allowed herself to imagine. A future where her family's basic needs were secure, where her work could create ripples of positive change beyond her immediate circle, where her own potential could be fully realized. "I don't know what to say," she finally whispered. "Say you'll consider it," Benedict replied. "That's all I ask for now." The weeks that followed were transformative for both Benedict and Dora. Released from the hospital with strict orders to reduce stress, Benedict began the difficult work of restructuring both his company and his life. He delegated day-to-day operations to his executive team, focused on strategic vision rather than minutiae, and even, to the shock of his entire staff, began leaving the office by 6 most evenings. Dora, meanwhile, wrestled with the opportunity and responsibility Benedict had offered. The practical benefits for her family were undeniable, but the emotional and psychological implications were complex. Would accepting such generosity compromise her independence? Would directing a major corporate initiative at 20 years old, with minimal formal education, set her up for failure? Most troublingly, how would her relationship with Benedict change with this shift in their professional dynamic? After much reflection and long conversations with her mother, Dora made her decision. She would accept the position and the trust for her family, but with conditions of her own. The trust would include provisions for education funds for other young people from her neighborhood. Her role would include mentoring opportunities for teenagers facing circumstances similar to hers. And most importantly, she would continue her own education, enrolling in night classes to earn the credentials that would silence those who might question her qualifications. When she presented these conditions to Benedict, his response surprised her. Instead of the negotiation she expected, he simply smiled and said, "I was hoping you'd say something like that." Those additions make the entire initiative stronger. What will happen to this unusual partnership, forged between two people from such different worlds? Will Dora's rise within Technova continue smoothly, or will she face resistance that even Benedict's support cannot shield her from? And as Benedict recovers and restructures his life, how will his relationship with Dora and her family evolve? Who among you has experienced a moment where someone believed in your potential before you? Fully saw it yourself? Share your story in the comments below. Spring arrived in Boston, melting the last remnants of winter snow and bringing new energy to the city. At Technova headquarters, the newly established Community Energy Equity Program was taking shape. Under Dora's cautious but increasingly confident leadership, the Pilot Solar Initiative had expanded to 12 neighborhoods across 3 cities, creating jobs and reducing energy costs for hundreds of families. Local politicians and national media had taken notice, holding up the program as a model for corporate social responsibility with tangible community benefits. For Dora, the past 9 months had been a whirlwind of learning, challenges, and unexpected victories. She had assembled a small but dedicated team, including several members who had initially been skeptical of her appointment, but now respected her unique perspective and surprising business acumen. She divided her time between program development, community visits, and evening classes at Boston University, where she was steadily working toward a degree in business administration with a focus on sustainable development. At home, the changes were equally profound. Her mother's health had stabilized with proper medical care, allowing her to engage more actively in family life and even occasionally volunteer at a local community center, sharing her gift for storytelling with neighborhood children. Michael and Sophie were thriving in their new school, developing interests and talents that previous circumstances had suppressed. Their small house, now properly repaired and modestly updated, had become a genuine haven rather than merely a shelter. Benedict, too, had undergone transformation. His health crisis had forced a reckoning with his priorities and lifestyle that he might otherwise have postponed until it was too late. While still intensely committed to Technova's mission, he now approached his work with greater balance and perspective. He had reconnected with old friends, developed interests outside the office, and even begun the difficult process of repairing relationships with his parents. Most surprising to both Benedict and Dora was the evolution of their own relationship. What had begun as an impulsive act of generosity on his part and desperate hope on hers had developed into a partnership based on mutual respect and genuine affection. They met regularly, not just to discuss the energy equity program, but to share ideas about everything from philosophy to politics to the latest scientific breakthroughs. In Dora, Benedict found a perspective refreshingly different from the echo chamber of privilege he had inhabited for so long. In Benedict, Dora found a mind that challenged and expanded her own thinking beyond the immediate concerns that had necessarily dominated her life. On a warm May afternoon, as cherry blossoms fluttered across the Boston Common, Benedict and Dora walked together after a meeting with potential program partners from the city government. The meeting had gone exceptionally well, with officials expressing interest in expanding the initiative to every eligible neighborhood in Boston. "You were brilliant in there," Benedict commented, watching as Dora navigated around a group of children chasing bubbles across the path. "The way you addressed their concerns about long-term maintenance showed how thoroughly you've thought through every aspect of this program." Dora smiled, still not entirely comfortable with praise despite months of professional success. "I just remembered what my neighbor Mr. Guzman always said about the programs that would come into our neighborhood. They'd make a big splash at the beginning, then disappear when the funding cycle ended or the exciting part was over. I wanted to make sure we had concrete answers about what happens 5 years from now, not just next quarter." Benedict nodded thoughtfully. "That's always been the gap in corporate social responsibility initiatives. Companies plan for the press release and the initial implementation, but not for the unglamorous work of maintenance and adaptation." He paused as they reached a bench overlooking the pond, where swan boats glided peacefully. "Speaking of long-term thinking, I've been meaning to discuss something with you." They sat, and Benedict seemed uncharacteristically hesitant, choosing his words with unusual care. "The board is extremely pleased with the energy equity program's results, not just the community impact which has exceeded our projections, but the business benefits as well. The positive press has improved our brand positioning, and several large institutional investors with ESG priorities have increased their stakes in the company." "That's great news," Dora responded, sensing there was more to this conversation than a simple update. "It is," Benedict agreed, "but it also creates a new challenge. The program has become a significant asset to the company, which means it will attract attention and potentially interference from those with different priorities than yours or mine." Dora tensed slightly. Over the past months, she had occasionally felt the pressure from certain board members and executives who viewed the program primarily as a marketing asset rather than a mission-driven initiative. "Are they pushing to change our approach?" "Not yet," Benedict replied. "But as the program continues to succeed and grow, there will be those who want to emphasize metrics that look good in quarterly reports over genuine community impact. I want to protect what we've built from those pressures." Dora nodded slowly, understanding the corporate dynamics better now after months of navigating them. "What do you suggest?" "I'm establishing a foundation," Benedict explained, his voice gaining confidence as he outlined his plan. "Separate from Technova, but with dedicated funding from my personal assets. The foundation will partner with the company, but maintain independent governance, ensuring that community needs remain the priority regardless of corporate pressures." He turned slightly to face her more directly. "I want you to lead it, Dora. Not immediately. You should complete your degree first and continue building the current program. But in time, this could create a platform for your vision that isn't constrained by quarterly earnings reports or shareholder demands." Dora stared at him, momentarily speechless. "You'd trust me with that level of responsibility, your own foundation." Benedict's expression softened. "Over these past months, I've come to trust your judgment more than almost anyone else's. You see opportunities and challenges that others miss entirely. The foundation needs your perspective at its core, not as an afterthought. As they continued discussing the possibilities, neither noticed how closely their shoulders had drawn together on the bench, or how their conversation flowed with the ease of people who had developed a connection transcending their professional roles. What both did recognize, though neither yet acknowledged, was how central each had become to the other's sense of purpose and possibility. That evening, as Dora helped Sophie with a science project, while her mother prepared dinner and Michael practiced guitar in the corner, a hobby he'd discovered through his school's now accessible music program, she found herself reflecting on the extraordinary journey of the past year. From desperate daily survival to discussing the leadership of a multi-million-dollar foundation, the transformation seemed almost unreal. Yet amid this positive change lurked a shadow of concern. The more deeply Dora became involved with Benedict and Technova, the more complex their relationship grew. She valued his mentorship and friendship immensely, but sometimes caught herself wondering where professional boundaries blurred into personal territory. Benedict had never expressed any romantic interest, and Dora herself had been too focused on family responsibilities and career development to consider such possibilities. Still, she occasionally noticed the curious glances from colleagues when they were deep in conversation, or the assumptions made by outsiders observing their easy rapport. More troubling were the whispers she sometimes overheard, insinuations that her rapid rise had more to do with being Benedict's project, or worse than with her actual abilities. Though such comments had diminished as her accomplishments spoke, for themselves they still stung, reinforcing her determination to earn every opportunity through demonstrable results rather than personal connection. The following weeks brought new challenges for both Dora and Benedict. A competing energy company launched an aggressive campaign against Technova's community initiatives, claiming they were merely marketing ploys rather than genuine commitments to sustainability and equity. Several community leaders who had previously supported the program began expressing doubts, influenced by targeted misinformation about the program's long-term impact on property values and local control. Simultaneously, Technova faced financial pressures as supply chain issues affected their production timelines. Certain board members began questioning the resources allocated to the energy equity program, suggesting that in difficult times the company should focus exclusively on its core business functions. These external and internal pressures created the first serious test of both Benedict's commitment to the program's mission and Dora's leadership capabilities. In a tense board meeting, Victor Harrington, still skeptical of Dora despite the program's success, presented a proposal to significantly reduce the initiative's budget and narrow its scope to only the most profitable neighborhoods. In challenging market conditions, we need to prioritize proven revenue streams, Victor argued smoothly. While the community program has generated positive PR, its direct financial contribution remains limited. I suggest we consolidate our efforts in areas with higher adoption rates and greater potential for return on investment. The underlying message was clear. Focus on wealthier neighborhoods where solar installation would be more profitable, abandoning the equity mission that was the program's very foundation. Benedict, now serving as executive chairman rather than CEO as part of his restructured role, listened without immediate comment, observing how other board members responded. Some nodded in agreement with Victor's pragmatic financial arguments. Others seemed uncomfortable but unwilling to openly object. All eyes turned to Dora, invited to this portion of the meeting to represent the program. In previous months, she might have been intimidated by the roomful of executives with decades more experience and Ivy League credentials. Today, she felt only a calm determination to protect what she knew was working. "With respect, Mr. Harrington," she began, her voice steady, "that approach fundamentally misunderstands both the purpose and the actual financial model of the program." She stood and walked to the presentation screen, pulling up data that her team had prepared. Yes, installations in lower-income neighborhoods generate less immediate revenue, but they create substantial long-term value in multiple dimensions. She methodically walked the board through metrics they hadn't considered. The positive media coverage valued at millions in equivalent advertising costs, The talent attraction benefits as socially conscious engineers increasingly chose Technova over competitors, the tax advantages of the program's structure, and most significantly, the reduced customer acquisition costs as word of mouth in tightly knit communities drove adoption faster than expensive marketing campaigns in wealthier areas. Furthermore, she continued, abandoning these communities now would generate significant reputational damage that would affect all aspects of Technova's business, not just this program. We've made promises that these neighborhoods have heard, before from corporations that ultimately broke them. If we become just another company that left when times got slightly tougher, the cost to our brand would far exceed any short-term savings. By the time Dora finished her presentation, the mood in the room had shifted perceptibly. Several board members who had seemed to support Victor's proposal were now asking thoughtful questions about the program's long-term metrics and community feedback mechanisms. Even Victor himself appeared somewhat chastened, though his expression remained carefully neutral. When the discussion concluded and Dora was asked to step out while the board deliberated, Benedict followed her into the hallway. For a moment, he simply looked at her with an expression she couldn't quite interpret. "What?" she asked, suddenly self-conscious. "Did I overstep?" "No," Benedict replied, a smile slowly spreading across his face. "You just reminded everyone, including me, why this program matters, and you did it with data and business logic. They couldn't dismiss, not just moral arguments they might consider luxury in difficult times. That was masterful, Dora." She exhaled, the tension of the presentation finally releasing. "I couldn't let them reduce it to a PR exercise. These are real people's lives and futures we're affecting." "I know," Benedict said softly. "That's precisely why you're the right person to lead this work." He hesitated, then added, "There's something else I've been meaning to discuss with you. Not here, not now, but soon. Something important." Before Dora could ask what he meant, Benedict's assistant appeared to call him back to the boardroom. With a quick squeeze of her shoulder, a gesture of support that had become familiar between them, he returned to the meeting, leaving Dora with both the satisfaction of her successful defense and curiosity about what important matter he wanted to discuss. She didn't have long to wonder. The following weekend, Benedict invited Dora and her family to his home for dinner, something that had never happened before. Their meetings had always taken place at the office, in public spaces like the Common, or occasionally at Dora's home when Benedict dropped by with books or resources he thought might interest her siblings. The invitation generated considerable excitement and speculation in the Cohen household. Sophie insisted on wearing her nicest dress, while Michael affected casual indifference that couldn't quite mask his curiosity about the home of a billionaire. Dora's mother, now able to move around with the aid of a walker, supervised the preparation of a homemade apple pie to bring as a contribution to the meal, gently but firmly overruling Dora's suggestion that they should arrive empty-handed. "Being a guest in someone's home means bringing something from your own," she insisted. "It doesn't matter if they have everything already. What matters is the gesture of giving, of making yourself part of the circle of exchange rather than just a recipient." Benedict's home surprised them all. Rather than the ultra-modern penthouse or sprawling mansion they had imagined, he lived in a restored brownstone in Beacon Hill, certainly luxurious and impeccably designed, but with a warmth and character that reflected careful curation rather than ostentatious display. Books filled built-in shelves, artwork from local artists adorned the walls, and comfortable furniture invited relaxation rather than formal posturing. Most surprising was how Benedict himself seemed different here, more relaxed, dressed casually in jeans and a simple sweater rather than his usual tailored suits, and clearly making an effort to put everyone at ease. He showed Michael his collection of vintage vinyl records, discussed flower gardening with Dora's mother, and let Sophie examine the small telescope set up near the window overlooking a tiny but beautifully maintained garden. Throughout dinner, prepared by Benedict himself rather than household staff, the conversation flowed easily among topics ranging from recent scientific discoveries that fascinated Michael to a community theatre production that Sophie's class would be attending. Dora found herself watching Benedict interact with her family, struck by how naturally he engaged with each of them, drawing out their interests and perspectives with genuine curiosity. After dessert, both the apple pie Dora's mother had brought and gelato that Benedict had sourced from a small Italian shop in the North End, Sophie and Michael wandered into the garden with Benedict's permission to examine the small koi pond he had installed. Dora helped her mother to a comfortable chair near the fireplace, then began gathering dishes despite Benedict's protests that she should leave them. "At least let me help," he insisted, following her into the kitchen with a stack of plates. As they worked side by side loading the dishwasher, a comfortable silence settled between them. Finally, Benedict spoke. "I wanted your family to see where I live, to know me a little outside the context of work before I shared what I've been considering." Dora set down the glass she was rinsing, giving him her full attention. "This sounds serious." "It is," Benedict acknowledged. "It involves your future, your family's future, and to some extent, mine as well." He took a deep breath. "The foundation?" "We discussed. I've been working with lawyers to structure it properly. It will be called the Cohen-Walsh Foundation for Community Energy Innovation." "Cohen-Walsh?" Dora repeated, surprised by the inclusion of her family name. "Yes," Benedict confirmed, "because while I'm providing the initial funding, the vision and direction should equally reflect your perspective. But there's more to it. Other than that," he gestured for her to sit at the small breakfast table in the corner of the kitchen, taking the seat across from her. "Dora, my illness made me confront something I'd been avoiding, the question of legacy, not just what happens to my wealth, but how the values and purpose I believe in continue beyond my lifetime." Dora nodded, understanding his concern. In the months since his hospitalization, Benedict had occasionally alluded to his desire to ensure that his resources would serve meaningful purposes, rather than simply accumulating or being dispersed without direction. "I have no children," Benedict continued. "No immediate family who shares my vision for renewable energy accessibility or community empowerment. But in you, I've found someone who not only shares that vision, but extends and improves it with perspectives I could never have." He reached into his pocket and produced a small flash drive, placing it on the table between them. "This contains copies of legal documents I'd like you to review with a lawyer of your own choosing, at my expense, but completely independent of my legal team." "What kind of documents?" Dora asked, making no move to take the drive yet. "Several things," Benedict replied. "The foundation structure and governance, as we discussed. A revised will that includes significant provisions for your family, regardless of your decision about the foundation. And," he hesitated briefly, "a proposal for a more formal familial relationship." Dora's brow furrowed in confusion. "A more formal?" "I'd like to legally adopt you, Dora," Benedict said simply. "Not to replace your mother, who is remarkable and whom I deeply respect, but to formalize what has already developed between us. A father-daughter relationship that would make you legally and publicly my heir and successor." Dora stared at him, utterly stunned. Of all the possibilities she had imagined when Benedict mentioned an important discussion, legal adoption had never crossed her mind. She was nearly 21, an adult by any measure. The concept seemed almost absurd on its face, yet the earnestness in Benedict's expression made clear how seriously he meant it. I don't know what to say," she managed finally. "This is completely unexpected." "I know," Benedict acknowledged, "and I don't expect an answer today, or even next week or next month. I want you to take all the time you need to consider what this might mean for you and your family. To discuss it with your mother and siblings, to consult with independent advisors who can help you understand all the implications." He leaned forward slightly, his expression intensely sincere. "What I want you to know is this, regardless of your decision about adoption, the provisions for your family's security, your educational opportunities, and your role in the foundation remain unchanged. This isn't a condition for my continued support. It's simply an opportunity to formalize a relationship that has come to mean a great deal to me, and that I hope means something to you as well." Dora nodded slowly, emotions churning too rapidly to name. Gratitude, confusion, affection, and caution all mingled as she tried to process the enormity of what Benedict was proposing. "I'll need time," she said finally. "This isn't something I can decide quickly." "Of course," Benedict replied. "Take all the time you need. The offer remains open indefinitely." Later that night, after Benedict had arranged for a car service to take them home, Dora sat with her mother in their small living room, the rest of the house quiet as Michael and Sophie slept. She had explained Benedict's proposal, watching her mother's face carefully for any reaction. For a long moment her mother was silent, fingers lightly tracing the pattern on the arm of her chair, a gesture Dora recognized from childhood as indicating deep thought. Finally she spoke. "What do you feel about this, my daughter? Not what you think about the practical benefits or concerns, but what your heart tells you." Dora considered the question honestly. "I care about him," she admitted. "Not romantically, it's never been that kind of relationship, but I do feel a connection that's familial in a way. He's taught me so much, believed in me when I didn't believe in myself, and I think I've given him something too. Perspective. Purpose, maybe even a kind of happiness he didn't have before." Her mother nodded. "I've seen how he looks at you. With pride, yes, but also with a kind of wonder, as though he can't quite believe someone like you exists in the world. It's how a parent looks at a child who has surpassed their wildest hopes." "But I already have a family," Dora said softly. "I have you, Michael, Sophie. I don't need to be adopted at 21. "Need? No," her mother agreed. "But perhaps there's something beautiful in choosing family bonds rather than only accepting those we're born with, in recognizing connections that form naturally and honoring them with formal acknowledgement." She reached for Dora's hand, her touch still strong despite her physical frailty. "I would never feel replaced, my darling girl. Your heart has always been big enough for many loves, and Benedict has been nothing but respectful of our family bonds while offering opportunities that I, with all my love, could never provide." "What would people think?" Dora worried aloud. "The rumors about why he chose me for the position were bad enough. If I become his legal daughter and heir, won't that just confirm the worst suspicions?" "Perhaps," her mother conceded. "But do those opinions matter more than what you know to be true? More than the good you can do with the platform he's offering? You've never let others' judgments determine your path before." They talked long into the night, examining the proposal from every angle, practical, emotional, ethical, and spiritual. By the time they finally went to bed, Dora had not reached a decision, but she had gained clarity about the questions she needed to answer for herself before she could. The following weeks brought both internal reflection and external challenges for Dora. The misinformation campaign against Technova's community initiatives intensified, with anonymous flyers appearing in neighborhoods where the program operated, suggesting that the solar installations would lead to government surveillance or health risks. Though these claims were easily debunked, they created fear and uncertainty that required careful community outreach to address. Simultaneously, as if sensing vulnerability, competitors began offering their own hastily assembled community programs with flashy promotions but little substance behind them. The market that Technova had pioneered was becoming crowded and confusing for the very communities they had sought to serve. Dora found herself working longer hours, visiting community centers and churches to address concerns directly, developing transparent educational materials, and implementing new measures to ensure that local residents remained central to the program's implementation, rather than feeling like passive recipients. Though exhausting, the work reinforced her conviction that the mission mattered beyond corporate competition or personal advancement. Through it all, Benedict remained supportive but carefully neutral about his adoption proposal, never pressuring Dora for a response or suggesting that her decision might affect their professional relationship. They continued their regular meetings about the energy equity program and the developing foundation, their easy rapport unchanged despite the significant question hanging between them. A crucial turning point came unexpectedly, not through deliberate decision-making but through crisis. 3 months after Benedict's proposal, as summer heat gripped Boston, a massive power outage struck the city during a record-breaking heat wave. Aging infrastructure, strained by unprecedented demand for air conditioning, failed catastrophically, leaving hundreds of thousands without electricity, including many of the city's most vulnerable residents in poorly insulated homes and apartments. City officials quickly declared a state of emergency, opening cooling centers in public buildings with generator power, but many elderly and disabled residents couldn't easily travel to these locations. The situation was becoming dangerous, with several heat-related hospitalizations already reported. In a moment of insight, born from her own experiences with precarity, Dora recognized an opportunity for the Energy Equity Program to demonstrate its true purpose. Those neighborhoods where the solar initiative had already been implemented still had functioning power, independent of the failed grid. Within hours, she had mobilized her team and community partners to transform solar-powered homes into impromptu neighborhood cooling centers, providing relief to those most vulnerable. Benedict, seeing the potential of this response, immediately authorized emergency funds to supplement the effort with mobile battery units that could power critical medical equipment in homes where patients couldn't be moved. Working together, Benedict and Dora coordinated with city officials, turning what had begun as an improvised community response into a structured emergency relief operation that potentially saved dozens of lives during the 3-day outage. As they worked side by side in the Emergency Operations Center, established at Technova headquarters, directing resources and troubleshooting challenges, the bond between them strengthened in ways that transcended mentor-mentee dynamics or even friendship. They functioned as a team of equals, each bringing distinct strengths and perspectives that complemented the other's approach. On the third night of the crisis, as power was gradually being restored across the city, Dora found Benedict alone, in his office, reviewing data on which neighborhoods remained without electricity and prioritizing the deployment of their remaining mobile power units. Despite his exhaustion after 72 hours with minimal sleep, he was focused entirely on identifying where the need remained greatest. "You should rest," Dora said from the doorway. "The emergency team can handle the remaining deployments." Benedict looked up, fatigue evident in the shadows beneath his eyes, but a quiet satisfaction visible too. "I was just thinking about something my father once told me when I was very young, before our relationship became so complicated. He said that the measure of success isn't what you accumulate, but what difference you make when it matters most." He gestured to the map on his screen, highlighting the neighborhoods where Technova's emergency response had made the most impact. "For the first time in my career, I feel like I'm meeting that standard, not through technology alone, but through connecting that technology to human needs in real time." The simple sincerity of his statement crystallized something for Dora. Throughout the crisis, she had observed Benedict not as a billionaire philanthropist playing at community service, but as someone genuinely committed to using his resources and knowledge to make tangible differences in people's lives. The man before her, exhausted but still working to direct help where it was most needed, was someone she was proud to be associated with, someone whose values aligned with her own, in ways that transcended their different backgrounds and experiences. "I've made my decision," she said quietly, "about your proposal." Benedict straightened in his chair, giving her his full attention despite his fatigue. "You have?" Dora nodded, moving further into the office and sitting across from him. "I'd like to accept both the foundation co-leadership and the adoption. Not for the inheritance or security, though I'm grateful for those things, but because I believe we're better together than apart. The work we've done during this crisis proved that." Relief and joy transformed Benedict's tired face. "Are you certain? I meant what I said about taking all the time you need." "I'm certain," Dora confirmed. "My mother and I have talked about it extensively. She supports this decision fully. She says it's not about replacing family, but expanding it. Michael and Sophie are excited about having a rich uncle who's also kind of a brother-dad," she added with a small laugh, quoting her brother's characteristic blend of pragmatism and emotional insight. "There will be public scrutiny," Benedict cautioned, though his expression remained hopeful. "Questions about my motives, your background, all of it." "Let them talk," Dora said with newfound confidence. "What matters is what we build together. The foundation, the program, the example of what's possible, when different perspectives unite around common purpose. The rest is just noise. The formalization of their new relationship unfolded gradually over the following months. Benedict's lawyers carefully structured the adoption to respect Dora's existing family bonds, while establishing her legal status as his daughter and heir. The Cohen-Walsh Foundation took shape with joint leadership provisions that balanced Benedict's experience and resources with Dora's community insights and emerging business acumen. As predicted, the announcement generated significant media attention and speculation. Some business publications praised the innovative approach to succession planning and social impact. Others questioned whether the arrangement was more publicity stunt than genuine commitment. Within Technova, reactions ranged from enthusiastic support to thinly veiled skepticism, with Victor Harrington notably among those who expressed concerns about maintaining appropriate corporate governance. Through it all, Dora and Benedict remained focused on expanding the energy equity program, which had gained substantial credibility during the power outage crisis. Cities across the country began requesting consultations on implementing similar initiatives, creating opportunities for the program to scale far beyond its original scope. As autumn painted Boston in brilliant colors, Dora sat in her office at Technova, reviewing applications for the program's newly established apprenticeship initiative, a pathway for young people from participating neighborhoods to gain technical skills and certification in renewable energy installation and maintenance. The program had been her idea, inspired by her own journey from economic precarity to professional opportunity, but with structured support that made the path more accessible to others. A knock at her door interrupted her concentration. Looking up, she saw Benedict leaning against the doorframe, a small package in his hands. "Got a minute?" he asked. "For you?" "Always," she replied with a smile, the phrase having become something of a private joke between them. Acknowledgement that despite their busy schedules, they prioritized their connection. Benedict entered, closing the door behind him. "The board has officially approved the expansion to 15 new cities," he announced. "Full funding, local hiring requirements included, just as we proposed." "That's fantastic," Dora exclaimed. "Even Victor voted yes." "Even Victor," Benedict confirmed with a slight smirk. "Though I suspect that has more to do with the program's profitability metrics than any sudden conversion to our philosophy." He set the small package on her desk. This seemed like the right moment for this. Curious, Dora unwrapped what appeared to be a simple picture frame. Inside was a document, the final adoption decree, officially recognizing her as Dora Cohen-Walsh, daughter of both her birth mother and Benedict Walsh. "I thought you might want this for your office," Benedict said quietly. "A reminder of both where you came from and where you're going." Dora traced the embossed seal with her fingertips, emotion tightening her throat. "I never imagined any of this," she said softly. "That day on the road, helping a stranger with a migraine. How could I have known it would lead here?" "That's the beauty of compassion," Benedict replied. "You offer it freely, expecting nothing in return, and sometimes it transforms everything for the one who receives it and the one who gives it." A year had passed since that rainy afternoon when their paths first crossed. In that time, both their lives had been fundamentally altered, Benedict finding purpose beyond profit and connection beyond transaction, Dora discovering capacities within herself that circumstances had previously suppressed and security that allowed her natural gifts to flourish. The foundation they were building together would extend that transformation to countless others, creating pathways to sustainability that honored both environmental needs and human dignity. Their unusual family bond, transcending traditional boundaries of class and circumstance, stood as testament to possibilities often overlooked in a stratified society. As Dora placed the framed document on her desk, positioning it beside a photo of her mother and siblings, she reflected on the journey that had brought her here, the hardships that had forged her resilience, the chance encounter that had opened unexpected doors, the courage to step through those doors despite uncertainty, and the willingness of both herself and Benedict to recognize in each other something worth nurturing. "We should celebrate," Benedict suggested. "Dinner with your mother and siblings this weekend. I'll cook." "Only if I can bring dessert," Dora countered with a smile. Mom's been perfecting her apple pie recipe. Deal, Benedict agreed easily. After all, the best celebrations are the ones where everyone contributes what they do best. As they left her office together, heading to a meeting about the next phase of their growing initiative, Dora felt a deep sense of rightness in this unexpected path her life had taken. The road ahead would undoubtedly hold new challenges, but she would face them with expanded resources, not just material ones, but the strength of expanded family bonds, professional capabilities, and the confidence that came from knowing her voice mattered. What had begun as simple roadside compassion had blossomed into something neither could have imagined. A partnership that was changing not only their lives, but the lives of communities across the country, a family defined not by blood, but by shared values and mutual respect, and a foundation that would extend their impact for generations to come. As Benedict often remarked in their foundation meetings, quoting an African proverb, "If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together." Together they were indeed going far, beyond the limitations of their individual circumstances, beyond conventional expectations, toward a future where technology served humanity's deepest needs and opportunity transcended traditional boundaries. In that shared journey lay the true wealth that Benedict had sought throughout his career without recognizing it, and the security that Dora had struggled to provide for her family without adequate resources. Neither alone could have created what they built together, a testament to the power of unlikely connections and the transformative potential of seeing the full humanity in those society often renders invisible. Congratulations. Type 9 in the comments so that I know you stayed until the end with me. Thank you for watching, and until tomorrow's story on this same channel.